Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Mike Friesen. With us for our program today, Assemblyman Jim Tedisco. Jim Tedisco represents the 112th Assembly District in the Capital District region. That includes both Schenectady and Saratoga counties. And in fact, we have a guest with us in the studio for our program today. That is Jennifer McCullough. She is the Senior Director of PR and Development for the Washington, Warren, Albany ARC. And Jim Tedisco, first let me welcome you both to the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Jim Tedisco, why do we have a guest with us today?
It's great to have a guest. Usually it's just you and I, two stodgy guys talking.
Two old guys talking at the table.
But now we have an important person from our community, the Capital Region, with us today. You know, we've had a lot of shows we've put on so far at the start of 2016. And we've talked about how we can change the tenure here in Albany. Give the government back to the people we represent, really. And we've often talked about the fact that the most important part of this representative democracy is not governors, is not assembly members, is not senators, but the people who are the taxpayers, the voters, and who work in the trenches to do the jobs we need to make the quality of life that's so important for the state of New York. And Jennifer is one of those people. They're the most important part of what we'd like to make more of a representative democracy. And Jennifer represents public relations for an organization that takes care of not only the most vulnerable parts of our communities, but their families. They interact together with the families, provide services 24/7. Some of them have needs that are 24/7. Very important organizations, not only in Warren, Washington, and Albany, but in my district, the 112th, Bridge in Saratoga, Schenectady ARC, but across the state of New York. She'll tell you about the numbers of clients and the number of jobs which are related to that. And we wanted to have a discussion today about what is happening with the staffing levels, with the care, and how we can better make sure that care is there, make sure the staffing is there for these organizations, and make sure we can retain the staffing. Because I know from my own personal life, you know, my brother Joey had Down syndrome, and consistency is very, very important for someone who has a disability. And I've told you the story before about Joey when he would go out for some of the services and come back on the bus. And Joey would come off the bus crying, upset. Shoes and socks were gone because Joey had thrown them out the window. We knew on that day that a staff person who had some consistency with working with Joey and helping with rehab with Joey had left the organization. Might have been there 3 months, 6 months, but Joey and much of the staff gets used to those staff people, and that consistency is so important. And I'd like to have Jennifer talk a little bit about what her organizations do and what her role is, and a part of what the need is and a part of what we're going to discuss relates to how we pay them, and the discussion about the governor unilaterally doing some things about pay and salary related to minimum wage.
Jennifer, talk to us a little bit about, before we get into the impact of some of the proposals that are being talked about and how they might impact your work at the ARC. For the folks who don't know maybe what goes on at their local ARC, tell us a little bit about the program.
Well, New York State ARC serves about 60,000 people throughout our state with varying levels of abilities, individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. They employ 35,000. So out of those 35,000, 22,000 are the direct support professionals, the people who provide the hands-on care to the folks that we serve. Warren, Washington, Albany ARC is one of 48 chapters throughout the state. We personally serve about 1,000 in the Capital District. So what we're here to talk about today is these individuals who very selflessly care for these folks day in and day out. 24 hours a day, 7-day a week care for individuals who by no faults of their own were born with obstacles to overcome. And as Assemblyman mentioned, these individuals become family members to the folks that we serve. They're there with them all day long, and any hiccup in that care can be devastating for some of the folks that we serve. So I'm here to speak today about rewarding these folks, the pay that they deserve, and some of the impacts of a $15 minimum wage that will have on our field can be devastating for the people.
Well, now you see, that sounds to me like you're almost contradicting yourself. You want to get them the pay that they deserve, but you've got some concerns about the implementation of a $15 minimum wage. What's going on, Jim?
Jennifer said it right. Removing obstacles for people. What is the most important role for government? I think the most important role for government on all levels is to be there to help in any way possible to remove the obstacles for those of us in this room, for all the people across the state, but especially for the most vulnerable, so they can be everything they can be with the God-given talents they've been given. And if you don't have the staffing to do that, it's very problematic. Let me talk about, first of all, I think all this started, the stress that we see with these ARCs and people who deal with the most vulnerable and retaining them, with the state-run organizations that kind of compete for staffing with those non-for-profits that Jennifer represents. They pay higher salaries. Jennifer, I think you pay $10.50, $11 as a starting salary.
On average.
And the stress has been that these state-run facilities, and the money comes from, let's make that point, Medicaid money from the state and Medicaid money from the federal government.
Correct.
If they don't provide that Medicaid funding, which we get to put into the helping the most vulnerable, they can't provide that competitive salary for staffing let. So the stress was there already, pulling people away. Now the governor has doubled down. You saw what he did unilaterally by saying food service people deserve $15 at a minimum wage. Look, we are all in this room. I bet you 99% of the people support a minimum wage. It's not a living wage. It's a minimum wage. Kids who aren't going to college or are going to college need some money for tuition and other things. An adult working 2 or 3 jobs needs to compensate for some of the salary, for some of the things they need, their mortgages, car payments, things of that nature. But it's a way to get some training, some responsibility. But unintended consequences happen when you say, wouldn't it be great to have a more perfect world and pay $15 to people at McDonald's, Burger King, Colonel Sanders, Kentucky Fried Chicken? And don't get me wrong, those are jobs. Anytime you can get a job, it's important. But compare that to somebody who has how many hours of training?
100 hours of training upon hire and 25 hours every year thereafter.
What are your concerns about the implementation of these minimum wages, first with the food workers and then across the board?
I have several concerns. First of all, across our field in the industry, we're at about 10% vacancy rates right now for this position. It's a tough job. It's not for everybody. Some folks start this job thinking they can handle it and realize that it's not for them, and that's okay. The sad thing is the people that start and realize this is where I deserve to be and this is where I want to be 20 years from now, we've got assistant executive directors, senior positions in the organization that started as direct support professionals 20 and 30 years ago. We're afraid that there are folks out there looking for employment that won't even give this job an opportunity, won't even give it a chance, and that is a shame because they'll never know the rewarding career that they could have. They're going to go work a cash register for $15 an hour and not have that immense responsibilities. So we have that initial issue. Then take a look at the issue, okay, we already have these vacancy rates and we may lose the wonderful people that we have because they can go earn $4 an hour more and they need to consider their families. They need to care for their families, and we get that. But this will have devastating consequences for the people that we serve.
You used the phrase unintended consequences. Yeah. That's really what's at play here, right?
I could tell you the ARC in Schenectady and the Bridge Organization ARC in Saratoga are seeing people leave to take McDonald's and Burger King jobs because they know they're going to get that $15. And right now they can't afford to pay that $15. And people love these jobs. You know, they're providing the service, they care for the people, they do the training. But as Jennifer mentioned, they have families also. There's tremendous stress. Very important job. We have to ask the question, what's most important to do first? Take care of food service workers or take care of those who we need to retain to take care of our most vulnerable in ARCs and communities, for the staffing, for the individuals, for the families that Jennifer represents. And I think if you ask that question, it's those individuals who should be looking at a higher minimum wage and more salary and more dollars. So now we've got that pull taking place. And they've got slots they can't fill, and then you've got tremendous overtime taking place, and people are getting more stressed out. You don't want those people who deal with your most vulnerable to be stressed out. It's not good for them. It's not good for the clients. Then here's the third triple down. The governor says all business is $15. Where are they going to get the money? The governor hasn't agreed to say, we're going to give you the Medicaid money and the federal money to give $15 an hour. Even if they do, they're still competing with all those other businesses at $15 an hour. Shouldn't they be, if it is 15, and I'm not sure food service should be 15, shouldn't there be 17 or 18? They're taking care of our children, our most vulnerable, and other clients who are our most vulnerable. So this is the concern we have in this budget process right now. We want to make sure that those individuals are able to be retained, and we have the services and the clients and the compassionate people to take care of those clients that are the most vulnerable in our communities.
And it's not just the employees then, it's the clients too, as the Assemblyman told us in his story about his brother. He knew when his brother, the staff taking care of his brother, changed because there was obvious, visible consequences, and you must see that all the time.
All the time, and we absolutely support a person-centered approach. So what we mean by that is, if your brother or sister is coming to us for care, we're first going to take a look at what their needs are, what their wishes are and choices are. Perhaps they want to go out in the community and volunteer for the day. We need to provide that staffing so that they can do that. If the funding is not there to compete with the fast food workforce, okay, what's going to happen is agencies like NYSARC will have to fund that difference. That means by the end of 2017, a $270 million bill that the agency will have to bear that burden.
That would be the increase in your cost if every ARC employee was paid the $15
Absolutely.
wage?
And that's just to start. That's not even considering the ripple effect that this will have, the people that worked for us for 15 years that deserve a commensurate bump in wage.
That's a common thing that gets discussed here in Albany, that a lot of people who don't pay a lot of attention to the issue don't really understand. You raise the minimum wage, well, then you have to raise the wages of those people above
Correct.
the minimum wage, or else they're making minimum wage all of a sudden, and they've got years of experience maybe on top of the entry-level people.
Right. So to balance out that burden, what NYSARC would have to bear is a decrease in the workforce of about 5,000 employees. So the people that we serve will suffer. We'll either have to serve less or offer fewer choices.
So Jim Tedisco, what do you do now?
Well, and don't get us wrong, I think we all support a minimum wage, but an appropriate minimum wage. And we'd love to see those workers get $15 an hour, but we don't think that maybe all the workers should get $15 an hour. Let's evaluate the job itself. What does it consist of? This consists of taking the clients and the family and working with the families of the most vulnerable in our communities across the state, getting trained for 100 hours, being with them 24/7, dealing with the problems that Jennifer has talked about. Those are serious, important jobs. We can't afford not to retain the best of staff people to deal with those particular jobs. So what we've got to do is take the fight to the budget process this year and make sure we let our colleagues, and by the way, this is not a Democrat or a Republican issue. You can talk to guys from both sides of the aisle, gals and guys from both sides of the aisle who understand this. Many have members in their families who need these services, but it's not a question of us having members in our families. It's a question that we are representatives. And as I stated at the beginning, the most important part of this job is not us. It's us as representatives for the people we represent, who we have to remove those obstacles for the best we can. And right now, we're not doing the best job of removing those obstacles. We've got to make sure before this budget is done that we're making these organizations whole, that we can retain the best of staffing, those people who are trained, compassionate, caring, want to serve these individuals, understand the stress, and are not going to be torn away from doing that because there are other jobs which are less stressful but don't live up to the real obligation that these important jobs live up to. And that's the challenge we're going to be facing. And Jennifer's here to help us get that message out to those people who are most important, the 19.5 million people of New York State. It's not only a capital region concern. This is a statewide concern with all these agencies and all these families.
And I bet New York State ARC is bending the ears of every representative you can find to let them know, this. I get back to that phrase, unintended consequence of this minimum wage, what it might mean for you and your organization.
Absolutely. Across the state, all of the executive directors of the ARC chapters and the executive director of NYSARC, Steve Kroll, they're all speaking out on behalf of these workers. We need to keep our people safe. It is a responsibility of the government to keep these folks safe. And the people who are going to do that are the direct support professionals, and they deserve a little more respect and a little more consideration.
We're out of time, Jim. We got to stop you right there.
Do you folks have a stem winder?
I know. Do you folks have a website where people can find you and what services
we
you
do.
provide?
For Warren, Washington, Albany ARC, you can visit www.aarc.org and nysarc.org.
Let me thank Jennifer in the work she does and her other staff people do and the work of our ARCs. They are so important for the families and the clients they serve in New York State. So
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being
Appreciate
here.
Jennifer McCullough, thank you for being here. Jim Tedisco, always a pleasure to see you. And of course, we thank you folks too for spending your time with us, and we'll hope to see you all soon for our next edition of Assembly Calendar.